Hello everybody and welcome back to Apple Gaming SE. This is the first news and opinions video for 2024. It will be covering December 31st of 2023 through January 6th. We're not changing up the formula. First discussion point for this video is new subs. I've got one new sub this week, so we're going to kick off 2024 with a new subscriber. Thank you to you. I'm now at 63 subscribers. I have been enjoying the interactions the last few weeks with streams, and they've been very active on my channel with conversations and chat. And since this year started, I've jumped into a couple other streams to chat with everyone. And it's been a great close to 2023 and a great start to 2024. So thank you again to everyone in and around this community. Going into the news for Apple into 2024, they're starting off a little more rough. Lawsuits. Boy, oh boy. 2024 is starting out just how 2023 ended. Should we be calling this 2023 version 2.0? Our first story is titled Apple Settles Lawsuit After Being Accused of Benefiting from a Gift Card Scam. And there's really not much to this one. Effectively, scammers were pretending to be the IRS or other tax agencies, were calling people to get Apple or iTunes gift cards from them, and then use those funds to buy Apple products or to buy their own apps, effectively depositing free money into these scammers' accounts. The way Apple handles gift cards and App Store payouts means that they do get indirect benefits from the scammed gift cards, and those who were scammed were effectively SOL. There has been some pushback on Apple and their willingness to help those who were scammed in this process, and Apple has been seeing itself as not really needing to do anything because the customers who bought the gift cards then gave the gift card codes to these scammers when Apple explicitly states not to give out those gift card codes. So, at any rate, the way things are working out in court, I guess it wasn't looking good for Apple, so they decided to settle. Our next story, or it's actually a pair of stories that are kind of related, but they're not quite the same thing. Both are coming from 9to5Mac. The first is named U.S. expected to hit Apple with major antitrust lawsuit this year, and the second is U.S. antitrust case against Apple's App Store exclusivity is, quote, firing on all cylinders, end quote. So the U.S. Department of Justice is looking to bring cases against Apple in regards to monopolistic practices. And this isn't altogether unsurprising, or it's not altogether surprising, since the EU is putting the pressure on Apple as Japan is as well. The first of these is in regards to the Apple Watch being available on other platforms. And I will say I straight up and outright do not want the Apple Watch available on any platform except Apple's. No company, as best I can tell, supports their health-focused products and safeguards customers' data like Apple does. I'm specifically talking about health data. Their encryption and handling of the data is legitimately zero trust. Apple's handling of this data is zero trust. It doesn't come off of your phones or your watches, and it's not transmitted to Apple unless you explicitly opt in for one of their research studies. And frankly, Google's track record for keeping your private data is borderline piss poor. They had to settle a $5 billion case this week for tracking users of Chrome when using incognito mode, despite explicitly stating that they didn't keep track of that data, nor did they keep records of it. This isn't any different from Meta having intentionally sold data about its users to other countries, despite explicitly saying they didn't do so. You notice there's a lot of explicitlys in here. There's intentional lying by these companies, and so it just makes me uncomfortable. Google's Firebase Analytics, for example, do not require even basic TLS encryption for transmission of data. And we learned that from Beeper Mini just very recently. My fear is that Apple is going to be forced by the US government to make Apple Watch work with Android. But to do so, Google is going to require access to the data, or at least the metadata, of the Apple Watch's health metrics. When Apple will invariably push against this, Google will go to Uncle Sam and they'll try to force Apple to comply with Google's analytics engines. If Apple is forced to make Apple Watch work on Android, I suspect it won't be long before Fitbit ends up in the Google graveyard. And Fitbit is already headed for life support given how poorly Google has done with the brand since acquiring it. All of that is to say, in this hypothetical situation, if you have an Apple Watch with an iPhone or an iPad, it's not going to make any difference. I'm only concerned about how this data is going to be handled on the Android side of things. The next part of this lawsuit, or this conglomeration of potential cases that is going to be brought against Apple, is iMessage. And we're likely going to need to see how things play out with Apple's RCS implementation next year. I don't think iMessage is going to get too far unless a US court orders that everyone adopt iMessage's end-to-end encryption mechanism, which is remarkably unlikely since the FBI and CIA would have a conniption over that. Not to mention Google, Meta, and everyone else with their own encryption mechanisms wouldn't be able to use Apple's end-to-end encryption to scrape user data on their habits, or to scrape data on users' habits for their own ad revenues. Something that's in here also is Apple's handling of AirTags, but I'm not sure this is going to go anywhere at all because Apple, Google, and Samsung are already collaborating on a system that will allow the use of a universal tag tracking system that keeps users, trackers, and the crowdsourcing mechanisms of various phones and watches all very anonymous. It's all going to be end-to-end encrypted. They're going to be handing off like device IDs. Account data is never transmitted in any way that's in the clear. So it's going to use the crowdsourcing of everybody having these very low power NFC devices inside of your iPhone or your Galaxy or your Pixel to track these things using Bluetooth or their NFC mechanisms. For this part of the Department of Justice's cases against Apple, I really just don't see it going anywhere, and I'm going to make a very early prediction that Apple is going to win this part of the case since they're playing nice with all of the other mega corporations in a way which protects consumers' privacy. Lastly, I have an opinion that is on third-party app stores. Since the rumors are hot on Microsoft being the first major game store, which is not surprising considering that Xbox is a major pillar for Microsoft, it wouldn't be long before Epic and EA and whoever else does the same. So if Apple is forced to open up third-party app stores, you're going to see it flooded with Microsoft, Epic, EA, Valve. Steam could come to iOS and iPadOS with a game storefront that competes with Apple more effectively. And this is a major, major concern for Apple since almost half of their App Store revenue is from games. And how badly will they ultimately be hurt? That's hard to say. Microsoft and Valve both have deep pockets to promote their stores if they care to run the infrastructure. Choice is generally good for consumers, and I just hope that these third-party app stores keep tight security and don't expose customers' data with less than ideal security practices. For whatever it's worth, I'm not worried about Microsoft, Valve, nor Apple's storefronts. I've been customers with all of them for well over a decade and never suffered a breach of my data from those companies. My data breaches have come from Sony and healthcare providers, so see my previous comment about wanting the Apple Watch to stay on iOS. Our next story is that apps will be reporting your earnings to tax authorities from this week on. This is also from 9to5Mac. Effectively, the U.S. and 37 other countries, part of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, have agreed that revenues generated from apps must be reported to the appropriate authorities. So no more hiding those eBay sales from Uncle Sam. Now the corporations are going to be reporting your money laundering habits directly. With all that said, let's switch gears and talk about some more fun things from this past week. First, from Mac Observer, there is a patent application which points to updated Apple Pencil compatible with iPhone. And when I first read this headline, I was imagining like Apple Pencil Mini. That's the product idea that popped into my head. If that ever does happen, I'm just going to go ahead and state that'll be the product name. The Mac Observer points out that this could help the iPhone be a bit more competitive with Galaxy Note and newer Galaxy Ultra devices, which is a fair argument. My dad has been using a tiny pocket stylus for his iPhone for years. So I can give a personal anecdote that there is a market for such an idea. The next thing, and this is definitely the biggest story from the week, Clicks adds a physical keyboard to your iPhone with shortcuts and backlighting. This comes from 9to5Mac, but I watched the Mr. Mobile video, who is one of the co-founders of this product. This thing looks like a love child between a yellow iPhone 5C and a BlackBerry, and it's hideous looking. The chin that this adds to your iPhone is worse than that of the iMac, and despite Mr. Mobile's assurances that their ballast is to even out the weight of the iPhone with the longer design, and it's the perfect balance, it looks too large for my small childlike hands, and I still think it'll be too top heavy. I mean, my iPhone 15 Pro is already a little too top heavy for my liking. But I will not deny there is a utility for this kind of product. If you prefer the physical keyboard life and wish to have those days come back, I can't say I blame you. My first smartphone was a Samsung Blackjack 2, which had a keyboard similar to this one, just a bit more cramped. And there's certainly a part of me that wants to try this out for the nostalgia bait of it all. That aside, they do have some compelling arguments. Having a full screen experience when typing would be really nice, and watching Click's demo is compelling. On my Mac, I live and die by Spotlight search, but that's using the command key in the spacebar. But I never use Spotlight on my iPhone. If I could, it makes me start to wonder if I could live without a Mac. I mean, we're already getting more and more AAA games. Who's to say what the future holds? What I'm not sure of is if I want to pay $139 for the privilege. I do hope they're successful and the product can be refined a bit. It made me think of my HTC 7 Pro with its slide-out keyboard. Maybe one day I could be convinced. Only time will tell. So those are news and my opinion on those articles for the first week of January 2024. I hope you've all had a good week. I hope the coming week is great and treats you well. I will be back with Friday and Saturday streams for this coming week. And I hope to chat with you all then. Please like and subscribe, share the video if you're able, and I look forward to speaking with you in the next one. Take care now. Bye-bye.
They're breaking off. Boost, don't lose them.
Bravo 1 to HQ.
Good job.
Weapon.
That was... I know it all too well.